we closed on July 9th, and that was like they make you sign like this whole packet of papers, and not just sign it, they make you sign it three times. They print out the same exact thing three times. Like, you sure about this? You're sure about this? We want to make sure you realize the brevity of the situation, and you're you know I think the way they used to do things is that there would be like you get specific wiring and instructions for how you pay for it. We just went and got like a banker's check for our big old down payment. um you have to go specifically to your bank and ask for one, and they are like, they'll have it pre-printed out for the amount that you need or want, and it's not a big deal, but you have to go and actually do that. You can't just like write a check. I think there's a limit for writing checks for like $3,000 to $5,000, something like that. I don't know. It depends on your bank. Again, a lot of things are moving parts. It depends on your bank.
Mm-hmm.
um, but we had to go get that. We went there. It was like I got off work early, and then we went to go meet the couple who was selling our house and sign all the paperwork, and then get all of the deed, the information, everything. And then after that, they gave us like the one working key, and then we had to go back to our apartment and get like the first batch of stuff that we could just fit in our car. And then we came back here and we finished moving that weekend. And at the same time we were moving out, our new friends were moving in. So it worked out for us that way. But once we got there, it was, I mean, I was exhausted because we had done all that day, but it was very, very stressful because you go from the stress of buying a house and just all that to being, now I'm in this big empty house. I have to fill it. I have to decorate it. I have to keep it up. There's so many things that need to be fixed. And your mind is bouncing around everywhere. And, we were sleeping on like a mattress. We hadn't set up our bed yet or anything like that. And it's, it's very, it's very scary because you know you're just like, oh gosh, did I just make a huge mistake or whatever? And that's the thing about buying a house, is that even if you buy a house you absolutely hate it, or you have buyer's remorse or something like that they call it, it's really not financially beneficial to you to sell a home again within the first, I think, like 5 to 10 years, because of all of the associated costs with closing and realtors and all that stuff. I mean, the cool thing about the realtors though is that a lot of times you don't ever actually pay them directly usually. Like, it's usually just like whoever's paying for the closing costs. It's like, it's a percentage that gets taken out of it. And I think that a lot of like, typically it's the seller's responsibility to cover things like external agents, like real estate agents. And then like half of it goes to the listing agent, because there'll be a real estate agent listing the house, and there'll be another real estate agent, which is the one that you prefer, who's the buyer's agent. Um, but like if you just went to a house, for example, and you're like, oh, I want to buy this house, and then the seller has a listing agent, then they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, you're just going to use them, and they're going to get like, I think the total percent for realtors is like 6% of the whole deal. And then like, so if there's two realtors involved, then it's 3% and 3%. And then there's like other percentages that get taken out of that for like the companies representing them and all this other stuff. But for typically the listing agent's going to want, their whole cut. Um, but yeah, that's the long and short of the whole process. There's a lot more into it. I know you've got more questions you wanted to specifically ask, so I'll let you do that.
Yeah, it's all good. Like, so definitely, you definitely helped me gain a lot more understanding of some of these like terminologies that I've heard. Like, I've heard people say like, "Oh yeah, like I'm an escrow." It's like, great. What is that?
Yeah.
It's like I have no clue what that is. And then also just like I've always heard about closing costs, and like I've heard of seller's market, but like not really, like it would sound obvious, but like not really exactly fully understanding what that means. And then I was just hearing the whole process of like things that can happen, can potentially happen, just depending on, like I said, whether you're going into it by yourself or whether you're going to it with other people, also where you're currently living at. Like you said at the time you were in an apartment, and thankfully that kind of situation got was pretty easy to or easier to deal with than like other people's situations probably when it comes to being in the middle of a lease or something like that. So like there's a lot of things that like you said, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things just happening and just making sure that you're in the right kind of, you're finding houses in the right area. And as I was looking at these questions, I realized that like a lot of these kind of got answered in a way. Like I know like there's a lot of like stressful moments that you mentioned, like things with a pre-approval loan or with the seller themselves, or like just yeah, this thing bidding wars and stuff like that, which was like one of my questions, like asking if you put in an offer more than just one house, which you did say it was seven houses, you said.
Yeah, we were lucky number seven. I was, I was, we had, so the very first house that we put an offer on, it was actually out there in Roebuck Springs. I don't know if you're familiar with the area.
Hmm.
And we just fell in love with it. It was beautiful. They had beautiful vaulted ceilings. It was a very quiet area. It was a beautiful older neighborhood. Um, I loved it. It was so great. And at the time, this was our first ever offer. We had literally just met our realtor that day, and like we had talked to him online before, and we like met up with him at this first house. We took one look at the house, like no, and then we skipped the second house. Then we went straight to this house. We're like, oh my god, this house is just so great. It's got everything we wanted. Had the bedrooms we wanted. One of the things particularly I wanted was a basement because I wanted a game room. And I wanted a place that I could host people coming over, which what something we do now is actually just last night we had we'll have like a monthly board game meet, which it's not like any specific board games. It's just kind of like whatever people want to come and play. We have so many, and then some people bring their own, um, and then just be kind of loud, fun party. It's also usually a potluck, so lots of good food. That's definitely what I oftentimes look and forward to. Um, but just bringing people together once a month. I mean, that was one of my definite goals in wanting to buy a house, was just having a place that I could host people, whether they wanted to stay the night or whatever. I just wanted to, I wanted to have a space, that separate designated space, a downstairs space that I could, we could have video games, we could have board games, we could do whatever. But this house had one of those, and it had just a really pretty deck and vaulted ceilings, and it was really nice. And so our realtor at the time, he was like, okay, well, since like when I got at that time I was with Quicken Loans, which was already just bad, but they were like, well, okay, this price limit is just under your total amount you've been pre-approved for with them. So, we put in an offer for like so much, um, and then someone else had come in with an offer like the same day. And so like, okay, well now it's a bidding war. So this is a very mean thing that sellers will do. They say, we want your best and final offer. They don't do the bidding war anymore now. It's just, we want to see you put all your skin in the game at once, and we're not even going to tell you why we did or didn't select your offer when it comes to that point of contention. And we thought we were being smart because we're like, okay, we're going to do this fancy thing called an escalation clause, which is kind of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it's like we said, okay, we want to put $1,000 more down as an offer, more than whatever they put, up to the limit of our total affordance at the time. And we're just gonna presume that whatever they put isn't, I mean, because like at that point we are spending our top dollar. We can't do any more than that. And so we did that thinking it would be just a great idea. Technically speaking, I realized later that can actually make your offer look weaker, because it's like, well, you're not really committed then. You're just trying to outbid the other people, but you're still trying to spend the least amount that you can. You only want to spend more if the others are spending this much. So it's like this psychological warfare going on, where you're like, I have to make I want to buy your house, but I also have to consider how much I want to pay for it. And Um, so what ended up happening, we were just so enamored with this house. We were so happy and so excited because it was just this rush of emotions. Like, oh my gosh, we're gonna move here. It's great. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It was on top of a hill. You could see this beautiful view of downtown from there. It was great. They outbid us. They outbid our maximum buying power by $750, which when you consider how many thousands are in the process, like that's very little
Mm-hmm.
comparatively. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like they didn't like we were talking about outbidding them by $1,000. They outbid us by just a little bit more. And I was so upset. That would just be the first of many disappointments. Um, like it's very, very stressful. For some people, I mean, if you go into a less in demand area, that's not really so much about the school zones. Like we had some friends who bought a house in Hueytown, for example, and that I'm not going to say it's a bad area, but it's West Birmingham, and I don't know. I feel like I should probably leave it at that, but it's West Birmingham. So they put a bid on their house and they got it. That was their first bid. So it's going to be an individual experience, and it's going to be it's how much like things closer to the city, of course, are going to be more in demand. Um, or just closer to other things. Like technically speaking, I guess the closest thing to me is downtown, um, which I personally love because I really like going to like live music venues, and there's a ton of those there. I've been to, you've got Iron City, Saturn, let's see, Avondale Brewing Company.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of really cool stuff all around. And then there's like Slots Furnace, like not too far, for all the stuff that goes on there. Um, and then of course, there's just the whole downtown area with like, UAB and all of the associated stuff and the doctor's offices particularly, because I do go see doctors at UAB sometimes. But so it's just I like this area, but it is like there's a lot of like proximity and stuff like that. But Roebuck would have been a little bit further. I think it would have been like another 15 minutes out. But they yeah, so I bid on, I think the second house we actually put a bid on. They actually specifically told us, they said, we don't like that you're using Quicken Loans. They're like, get this bank that we chose, or we're not going to come down on our price. Like they were just like absolutely like it's like for one, whoever our financer is technically isn't their business, and it's just like it was kind of audacious of them to even say that, but sellers can do that because it's their property. Um,